Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Royal Blue Podcast. I'm your host, Conor O'Neill, joined today by Joe Thomas, Chris Beesley, and Gavin Buckland, as we look back on a very sombering afternoon for all connected to Everton Football Club, as they were beaten 3-1 by Fulham at Goodison Park on Saturday afternoon. When we spoke on Friday, we picked this game up as a must-win for Everton in their battle to avoid Premier League relegation, and unfortunately what transpired was anything but positive, as the Blues were well beaten by Marco Silva's side. I think it's safe to say Sean Dyche's men were second best throughout the whole 90 minutes, and the feeling as many Evertonians left Goodison Park on Saturday was one of real dejection, as a tough couple of weeks now await the Blues in their battle to avoid the drop. Joe, I'll start with you. There's no easy way to look at Saturday. It was a painful afternoon.
Yeah, it was a really difficult one. I don't think they were second best for the whole 90 minutes. So there was that period just after, probably about half an hour in, when they were already 1-0 down, and Dyche changed back to the 4-5-1. And last 15 minutes, this first half, first 5 minutes, the second half, for the better side, obviously got the goal. Half time, I was thinking, Everton, we're going to win this. But I think ultimately it probably transpired that the blip was probably more Fulham dropping off the pace a little bit rather than Everton particularly enforce themselves upon them. I think once Fulham decided this was a game that they wanted to win, I mean, they did so pretty comfortably. That second half didn't really fill me with a lot of confidence, really. It just felt all too easy. Everton didn't, once he went 2-1 behind, it never looked like getting back into that game. Obviously, Fulham went on and scored a third, and I had a lot of empathy with the people that were leaving from 70 minutes onwards because, as it transpired, they were right. You just couldn't see Everton getting back into that game. Obviously, they didn't, and it gives us a lot to ponder over for how the coming weeks are going to unfold, because there's just no way of avoiding the fact that Everton are in a very difficult position at the minute.
I think it was quite telling that Everton's first shot after falling 2-1 behind on goal, which was blocked, came in the 84th minute, which kind of tells you everything that we need to know, doesn't it, in terms of just how unlikely it was they were ever going to get back into that game. Bees, you're alongside me and Joe in the press box at Goodison, and I think Joe says they know a bit of a confidence kind of killer.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit more than that, wasn't it, on Saturday, because the manner in which Everton were beaten by a side who we all presume were on the beach.
Yeah.
The manager was in the stands. They'd lost 5 on the bounce. The centre forward wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Everything seemed to be before the game in favour of Everton, and what transpired was.
Yeah, that's why it was so painful, so potentially damaging. I think for Everton, as painful as hurtful as it was for us all. The three of us were all at Old Trafford the previous weekend when Everton were well beaten and were fortunate to escape with just a 2-0 reversal. But the hope was that there are certain fixtures you look at them and there's certainly no gimmies, but these are the ones you got to be targeting. You can understand that they've gone to Chelsea was tough, Tottenham was tough, even if that was at home, and Manchester United away. Gets to us almost like a choke point where then it's all got to be on the Fulham game, and I know managers will say that they're not must wins, or Sean Dyche flips it around and says they're all must wins, which sort of dilutes the phrase must win. Of course, that was other than last game of the season, you've got to win to stay up. That was as big as big as true as a must win, I think, as you're going to get for Everton. And I don't know, you can never win a game with a history book, but the fact that Everton had all these tough fixtures under Dyche, gone to places where they hadn't won for a long time, certainly from fans. This was the total flip of that. Fulham had won at Goodison last time out, but that was again in the artificial behind closed doors environment. They've never actually won a league game at Goodison, and this was say on the beach. I mean, credit to Fulham, but they were anything but that. But with the manager in the stands, Mitrovic suspended, and then coming into that, remember that's on the back, like we said, on the back of 5 straight defeats. These are the type of games that Everton really have to be winning to stay up, and that's what's left us all in such a somber mood now and scratching our heads concerned about where the next win's going to come from. It would have just relieved all that pressure and kept Everton ticking along. I mean, it's all such a tough teams involved at the moment, but that would have sort of kept Everton sort of on par, as it were, and now that was a massive setback, and that leaves a greater emphasis, a greater pressure now on the games ahead.
Gav, you said on Friday you were hoping for an easy afternoon. I think a nice routine a nice routine win. I think then words come back to haunt us by about 4:30, 4:45, when we realised this is anything but a routine win for the Blues. Obviously, I remember last season, you were worried that the Blues were, cooked up, face to drop. No fears have been eased now. If anything, they've only increased after what we witnessed on Saturday.
Yeah, I was just thinking on Twitter last week, there was somebody posted a clip of Echo and the Bunnymen at Sefton Park, and in the midst of it, you could see me standing in the lake at the age of 16. But that wasn't the most embarrassing thing with me on Twitter last week. It was me predicting a 3-0 win on Friday, I think, for Everton, sort of some start, and yeah, true. And I think, I think what Chris said is right, and we were picking it up. We were saying that this could be a business as usual win, good opportunity. And in the last 2 years, I'm thinking it's been really disappointing. But in many respects, Saturday was the most disappointing of all in that period, because of the gap between the importance of the game and who we were playing, and our performance was so flat. There was a big differential there, wasn't it? It wasn't as if we were playing it like, as Chris was saying, playing Tottenham or Chelsea or Man United. We get beat. Well, we do expect to get beat there, or a draw if you're lucky. Fulham, you're expecting to get a win and perform well given our circumstances, and we were the complete opposite, weren't we? From the start, apart from that 15-minute period Joe was talking about, and that was the single most disappointing thing for me on Saturday. The gap between the importance of the game and our performance, and that's really worrying at this stage of the season, Connor.
Joe, me and you were sat in the Goodison Park media room before the game, where the team news dropped. It was clear Donna Calvert-Lewin wasn't back in the squad. Amadou Onana was also out after picking up an injury, a groin injury, that meant he was sidelined. You turned to me and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I'm a little bit worried." And I think that was when the mood changed a little bit, wasn't it, around Goodison? And everyone looked at that team sheet and thought, that's a little bit weak. And looked at the bench and thought, there's not many options there if things are going wrong here.
Yeah, I think the penny dropped then a little bit as well. And I think that maybe something that Everton can perhaps look at is the management of expectations. I think over the coming weeks, we've been trapped in this cycle of, is he fit, is he not fit, with Dominic Calvert-Lewin for 10 games now, essentially. And I don't necessarily have a problem with Sean Dyche being vague over it. I can understand it's not straightforward, and I can understand that probably helps to have a little bit of intrigue when trying to perhaps make things harder for an opposition manager to set up for a team, things like that. But it's got a little bit ridiculous over the past fortnight. I've been tweeting out a lot of pictures of Dominic Calvert-Lewin training and things like that. And he certainly had the impression that he was on the cusp of a recovery, or on the cusp of a return. And for every team sheet, for every week that you go through like that, and then you get a team sheet and he's not on it, bearing in mind just how significant the difference in that Everton side is with him and not in it. Mm-hmm. It's just it deflates you so much when when turns on it. Like I didn't think he was ever going to start on Saturday, but thought maybe he might make the bench, or at the very least, if we didn't make the bench, we'd at least get a bit of an explanation as to why. Obviously, Sean Dyche after the game said he might be back for Palace, but it almost sets everybody up to fail and to kind of deflate at 2:00. And then when you look at everything else, obviously Amadou Onana wasn't there. A big loss. There's been a bit of a debate that I've seen over recent weeks about the influence he has and whether he gets too much credit or whether he doesn't get enough. I think he's a young and inexperienced player, but an incredibly talented player, which I think everybody agrees with. I actually think he's been quite good in recent games. There was room for improvement, but I thought we saw how much we missed him on Saturday for him not being there, just having that kind of disruptive force to make blocks, make interceptions, make tackles. I think Onana's got a lot to learn about what to do when he then picks up the ball on the edge of his own area or deep in his own half and then carries it all, his distribution, etc. But in terms of just being that disruptive force, it's crucial to Everton, and it's made them a lot harder to play through under Sean Dyche. Obviously, that wasn't there the other day, and we missed it. And again, it's just a surprise of him not being there. The kind of, you just think, well, did they know that? Was it touch and go on Thursday when we're talking about all the pre-match stuff? Was it not? Because again, I think that with a little bit more preparation, the fan base might have been a little bit more accepting when that team news came out. And in the end, you're just there thinking, no Onana, no Calvert-Lewin.
No Decore, of course.
Obviously, we knew Decore wasn't going to be there. No Patterson. Godfrey playing at right back, which, to be fair, Dyche kind of alluded to that might be the case on Thursday. But again, it just felt like a strange decision. And also the fact that it looked like it was going to be a 4-4-2 again, which hadn't worked against Manchester United. I know Manchester United are a good side, in good form at home. And there is the potential to chalk that off to just a one game difficulty against a good side. But 4-4-2 just didn't work at Old Trafford. I didn't see any redeeming features for Everton to start with it on Saturday. When you combine all those things to 2:00 when that team news drops, we can understand how you have a fan base that feels a little bit winded, because you looked at that side and you thought, wow, this is a must-win game, and I'm not sure how much faith I can put in that starting 11. And then you look at the bench and you think, obviously, he has got injuries, he has got suspensions to deal with. The recruitment and the depth and the strength of this side is a legacy that he's inherited. It's not his fault. But you also looked at that and you thought, well, if anything does go wrong, there isn't a hell of a lot on the bench there. There isn't much opportunity to change things. So all of a sudden it did kind of, I think the mood in the press box, the mood in the stands was there was an edgy nervousness. Dyche referenced it after, I think, at the start of that game, because I think everybody was sitting there fearing the worst. And obviously that's how it transpired.
He's obviously, Joe alluded to there, but Sean Dyche opted to go back to the 4-4-2 formation, which we'd seen him start with at Old Trafford. He changed it a lot earlier than he did at Old Trafford. I think it was like 20-25 minutes in when he went back to 4-5-1. Was you surprised to see him go back to 4-4-2, given how disastrous it had been the week before at Old Trafford?
Well, the thing I'd say is, like, as Joe's already alluded to, that is not many teams got the same sort of pace as United do, but it was a sort of a different way that Fulham exploited it. They had Willian on the wing. He was almost 35 years of age, but the way he was playing was just so intelligent. He was just finding those pockets of space every time, so he's not beating them with the sheer pace like Manchester United wingers were. He was being too clever for Godfrey. He was like leading him a merry dance, and then obviously Mikalenko on the other side, who came back in, and he's I think was showing Harry Wilson in for the goal. The two fullbacks were all at sea, unfortunately. It was a real mess. So you've got that dual sort of problem. It wasn't just the two in the middle where they're getting overrun, which they obviously were. I think that's been the problem both for Dyche and Ben, that Lampard had for a long time with this Everton side. If you've not got three men in the middle, then you're getting overrun, you're getting outnumbered, and they're in all sorts of problems. It was the way it was manifesting itself out on the wings as well. With the two fullbacks really struggled. I mean, I'm surprised. I would have imagined that Patterson would have come straight back in, but obviously Dyche sees him every day on the training ground and switched Godfrey over and put Mikalenko back in. But yeah, they're sort of a dual problem, because the way it affected both the central midfield and the full-back areas.
Gavin, in terms of, we've always spoken about this from the pod, and it's a real debate and topic for Everton fans, but it was on Saturday, wasn't it, where again you saw the stark reminder of just how weak and how kind of ill-balanced Everton's squad is, isn't it? Because all of a sudden they lose a couple of players and the team looks severely weakened than what it could be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw the bench, and there was a couple of faces I didn't recognise, which is slightly worrying, isn't it, really? And I mentioned on Friday, I felt that the absence of Coleman was going to really hit us hard. And I felt that was borne out, I think, the way Saturday played out, because as I say, he's a big vocal presence for us on the pitch. And his absence was magnified by Onana not being there as well. There's also quite a big vocal presence on the pitch. And I think those two players not being in the team meant that we looked a little bit rudderless and a little bit of lacking of leadership on the park on Saturday for me, because our two natural leaders, I suppose, Onana has captain teams, hasn't he, weren't there, and I don't think that helped. And I think also the absence of Coleman meant that Godfrey at right back is their second goal. You see quite a bit when you've got a centre half who's playing fullback, is they tend to naturally take positions sometimes that a centre half would take, not a fullback. And so when the cross comes over, Godfrey sort of acts as if he's a centre half, not a fullback. He gets drawn into the middle, doesn't he? Right, because that's his natural sort of reaction to the ball being played out wide and a cross coming in. When in reality, I think if Coleman had been there, he would have sensed the danger far more than Godfrey and moved out and blocked off Willian. And so I felt that the absence of Coleman was massive on Saturday. And the other point that you made, Joe, as well, I think in your post-match piece, I think is also valid, that it's quite obvious that Pickford really was a bit unsure what to do with the ball at his feet. And one of the things when Coleman plays is, Joe, you made the point, is one of our default out balls, isn't it, is Pickford will chip the ball over to Coleman on the right flank. He'll get it and then he'll move the ball forwards up the pitch. And that option wasn't available for us on Saturday. And consequently, we'd lost a little bit of shape with the ball at the back. And so I think Coleman's a big absence and Arne a big absence. The fact that really you haven't got a lot of options on the bench. I mean, I think you could argue that should have brought some subs on earlier. But yeah, it was threadbare, wasn't it? And that's also a worrying thing. I mean, I think there's a legitimate, as you see the third goal there, I think there's a legitimate discussion to be had about why Mina's not getting a shirt at the moment as well.
We will come on to selection, but I just wanted to that we haven't conceded on Saturday, because we've long spoke about Everton's problems in front of goal and going forward. I think we've long covered that. But for a lot, for spells off this season, we praised Everton's backline for being strong, resolute, defending well, defending with the bodies on the line and stuff. But in recent weeks, we've seen this back four almost become a little bit exposed. Haven't been, the goals Everton conceded on Saturday, although Fulham played well, they were easily preventable. And again, it was mistakes and people being caught out, just like it was at Old Trafford and just like it has been in recent weeks.
Yeah, I think that it felt like on Saturday that there was almost a lack of kind of intelligence, both collectively and individually, from the defensive performance. I think the first goal, Everton had a warning about Harry Wilson coming in off the left just before the first goal, when I think probably Willian put the ball across the box and Tarkowski could only really glance it to the edge of the area, and Wilson was there and he got his shot off and it was straight at Pickford. They got a let off, and a couple of minutes later he picks up the ball in all that space and Mikalenko just stands off him, lets him drift inside onto his left foot, lets him have a hit. There was no attempt to close him down, and that's obviously what Wilson wants to do. He hits the post, so you have the failure there to stop that from happening, and then you have the failure to react best to the ball that then rebounds back. Like Gav says, is almost, I can kind of understand what Gav's saying there about Godfrey playing almost as centre-back, full-back there. It's almost like his instinct was more to protect the box or that area around the goal, so that as opposed to kind of thinking about what happens if Willian gets at the back post. Like, you felt like rather than, there were a lot of balls over against Man United that drifted over Godfrey's head that he possibly misjudged. With that one at the weekend, you kind of thought he probably could have got to that and put it out for a corner if you wanted to. Yeah. But he was playing a different kind of game, I think, to what fullback would necessarily do. You're right, and even then, obviously, ball gets pulled back and there's no one there missing. You're missing Onana in the middle there to try and maybe block or get a block on the finish. And then the third goal, I just don't understand why Keane and Tarkowski let the ball drop. The first 15 minutes of this game was a game between, it looked like a game between two sides, neither of which had their first choice goal threats. Neither had their big man up top, and neither of them really knew what to do about it. Obviously, Daniel James isn't the biggest, and Mopé and Gray are obviously very diminutive compared to the centre backs. So I can understand Pickford's frustration when he's ended up lumping long balls up to those two against Ream and Adebayo. So I mean,
6 foot plus.
Exactly. But obviously they did their job and won everything in the air. And I just don't understand why. I don't understand why Keane or Tarkowski, both of them are letting that ball drop. It's 2-on-1. it's Daniel James, like he's tiny. The one thing they know he has got is pace. To have not just cleared that, even if they got to clear their teammate out with it, just deal with that ball over the top. As I say, it almost just felt like a lack of. It was like they were brain dead for the three big moments of the game from that respect, and even aside from that as well. Obviously, you referenced the good opportunity that Wilson had at 0-0, and then Andrea Pereira had two really good opportunities on the edge of the Everton box. One from the corner and another one from a pullback, where again he had time to pick his spot. I think one was saved and one was blocked, but he had plenty of time and plenty of space on the edge of the area to be picked out and to get a shot off. And this was a game. Mope had good chances, but once Fulham went 2-1 up, obviously we know they went to 3-1 up. This was closer to being 5-1 than it was 3-3.
Yeah. I think as well, obviously, there's the Dan James transfer, like somebody gets in behind again.
Yeah.
The ball rolls across the line. But Beesley, obviously, Marco Silva opted to play Dan James in front with his pace in behind, obviously, a bit of a false nine. Is this becoming a worry now that teams are looking at Everton and thinking that there's not much pace there? And if you get in behind, you're going to stretch them, you're going to expose. Because obviously, we've seen Man United do it the week before. And Everton look like they're chasing shadows a lot of the time. When that ball goes over the top, there's not a lot there in terms of being able to cover and get back.
Yeah, I think to Michael Ball about his column, which we'll have coming up later, and it's similar to United. Like you said, they've done their homework. You can't expect at this level teams not to scout you and to look what you're all about. And what under Dyche it's all been about. I mean, managers seem to say it every week when they were playing Everton. Long balls, second balls, making it difficult being in the face. But yeah, on the flip side of that, they do look wary to pace, and that was the thing, wasn't it? With James, like we said, he's small, but he's quick. He's one of the quickest players in the Premier League, and yeah, I concur with what Joe was saying. Between them, the two of them, Tarkowski and Keane, don't let him get through like that. I mean, it was just far too easy, wasn't it? I mean, fair enough if someone's done you with an amazing piece of skill or a world-class finish or something, you say, well, hold your hand up. That's fair enough. But yeah, it was simple stuff at this level, and that's what I think Dyche was asked about after the game, about the potential of results, just performances bottoming out after a promising start. There's not been as many points as the last few games. I mean, he referenced that being against playing about handy sides, and it was put back to him that there's plenty of handy sides ahead. So yeah, I can't say that haven't been found out, but it's a concern going forward. You're being done just so easily like that. Yeah, like I said, fair enough. If somebody does something amazing, well, hold your hand up. But yeah, it was just far too easy.
Just before I come to Gav, I can't think of one, so I'll ask you three lads. When was the last time Everton conceded a goal where you thought, wow, it's a great piece of individual brilliance, or a goal that kind of blew you away? Because if you think, I can't think of a goal in recent weeks that you can't look at the defending or the build up to it and think Everton should have done so much better there.
Well, it's a concern, isn't it? All of us, nothing springing to mind.
That's what I'm saying. That's the big concern, is that you can't sit here now and think, well, that goal, every goal we've conceded, every goal Everton have conceded in recent weeks, you can easily look at the defending or the build up and think they should have done better there.
Yeah, the best goal I can think, it's probably the opening goal against Arsenal when they lost at the Emirates, and Zinchenko played the ball through to Saka. It was a great finish. Even then, I think there were question marks over the kind of positioning between Mikolenko and Keane. But I think what really happened there was, because Everton posed such little threat going in, defensively they were very, very good in that first 40 minutes. But because they posed such little threat going forward, what Arteta was able to do basically move Zinchenko from left back and just have him drifting in between the lines in the middle for 5 minutes, knowing that it wouldn't expose Arsenal. And that gave him the freedom to find a little pocket of space and play that ball. But yeah, you make a good point. I think, just go through in the head now. The Forest goals, the Chelsea goals, the penalties in there, isn't there?
Yeah, I can't think of one, but you think to yourself, wow, that's far as the Merseyside derby. Both of them goals are
avoidable.
In terms of what you get caught. Yeah. But Gavin, obviously,
it's a good point.
Touch on you in terms of selection, because we saw after the defeat to Aston Villa, Connor Coles didn't have a great game against Fulham, got done for the goal. And Sean Dyche was then ruthless when Everton went to the Emirates on the Wednesday night, and obviously Conor Cody's dropped to the bench in place of Michael Keane. Obviously Cody's not had a look in since. Given how bad, how much, Tarkowski and Keane both struggled on Saturday, surely Sean Dyche should be looking to make more ruthless decisions now ahead of Everton's trip to Selhurst Park next Saturday, because surely he should be looking at that and that's not good enough. And I've already been ruthless with one player, and he's not available to him. Like, he should be able to look at and change things up, because it can't carry on the way it's going, can it? Especially at the back.
No. I'd say that's a separate podcast, that, isn't it? Yeah. Goals Everton conceded this season, analysed. That'd be a full 45 minutes, wouldn't it? Really. I mean, to be fair, I think if you ask most clubs, most clubs managers, could you stop goals this season against you? Most would say that we could have stopped most of them, to be fair. But ours have just been down to it. The difference is ours have been down to horrendous headers, haven't they, on occasions, at key moments in games. But yeah, I mentioned it then. I'm baffled that Mina is not getting a game, to be honest with you. When we talk about lacking Onana and Coleman, Mina he's effervescent, isn't he? He is he does give you a little bit of leadership on the pitch. I'm not sure where his head is. Bear in mind, he's been sat on the bench for about 3 months, and his contract's up at the end of the season. But it's certainly worth a try. I just thought that was. I mean, talk about like the Tarkowski and Keane thing. It was Tarkowski's fault, isn't it? What a stupid foul to give away on the halfway line, and originally, and I think that's definitely needs looking at. I thought Fulham were quite clever on Saturday. They really didn't play an orthodox striker, and they left the two centre halves a little bit who to pick up. And I've mentioned before the other thing on Saturday, which you mentioned, we don't have a natural player, number 6, who could sniff out danger. And I'd expected 6 who could sniff out danger to position themselves where. How many times was a Fulham player at the edge of the box on Saturday?
Yeah.
With nobody by them? 5 or 6 times. I mean, there was one in the first half, was the corner, wasn't it? Came over. Did that go to Pereira? I can't remember. At the edge of the box. He's in acres of space. And I think he just clipped it wide. Yeah, clipped it wide. So there was, and the goal came from, the second goal came from a player at the edge of the box unmarked, notwithstanding Godfrey was at fault. And I think that for all Dyche, this frustrating thing for me is Dyche made a big point in him. We saw that coaching clips and all this when he first joined. We all on him, and he made that big thing, didn't he, about protecting the V in front of the goal. That area space between the goal post stretching out to the edge of the penalty area. And the one thing we didn't do on Saturday was protect that V or that area space, did we? I mean, all their goals sort of came from that area, and that points to defensive inability, to ineffectiveness. Sorry, and also midfielders not understanding where they should position themselves, and that needs to be rectified, because Palace will give us some. I know we'll talk about this later in the week. Palace will give us some danger in those areas, haven't they? They've got players you can cut in from out wide and stuff. Yeah, and that definitely changed things down. I get Mean on the pitch. I know there's a risk that he might come off, but it's not as if we've got a shortfall of centre halves on the bench, have we? Really, to replace him. And Colin, answer your question. Yes, we need to make changes at the back.
So obviously, in terms of the other end of the pitch going forward, obviously, I said we've spoken about that at length. But once again on Saturday, Neil Maupay has 2 glorious chances at 1-1. He misses both. Okay, Tarkowski should also finish the follow to the first one after the header. But at 1-1, big moments in big games. Once again, they go begging.
Yeah, they do. And I really want Maupay to do well. I want it to work for him, Everton. Or at least I want this season to become a little bit more positive for him. I do think he has an appreciation for the fact that it's a privilege to play for them, and speaking to him a couple of times over the course of this season. But at some point you've got to start taking your chances, and they were 2 huge chances. I mean, the header, it's quite a reactive one, isn't it? Where it's sometimes it's just you've got to get on target and just hope it goes past a goalkeeper. So at least his instincts were right. At least he's in the right position for that. The 1-on-1 was a lovely move, and I saw think in my head at the time, although it was clearly a big chance, I thought it was a lot closer to the goalkeeper when he picked up the ball and at the end of it. I saw a screen grab of it on social media earlier on this morning and didn't realise just quite how much time and space he had. And when I saw that, I thought it is difficult to start, giving benefit of the doubt. He's missed some big chances in some big games, and you only have to look at the difference it would have made if he'd have scored some of them. Just off the top of my head, just thinking it was a great save from Alisson, but if he scores on his debut in the derby, then that's 3 points or 2 more points, and that's huge, isn't it? He had a good chance at Arsenal at 0-0 when Everton was so good for that first 40 minutes. That could have been a different game, and obviously again at the weekend, the two big chances. But Everton not having a ruthless edge is something that we're well versed to this season, isn't it? Without Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I think probably I, like most people, was surprised that Morphy even got the chance to start. And that's it's a strange one really, because you get the impression that Dyche is still trying to work out who is best at what. He's persevering with Gray up top, and then Ellis Sims up top, and then Morpay up top, and 2 up top, and 1 up top, and he's tried moving Amadou Onana more forward, and then dropping him back. And I guess I feel a bit sorry for Dyche in that respect, because obviously he's still pretty new to this squad. And he's been given a squad that when Calvert-Lewin isn't fit, the solutions aren't obvious. He's got to be canny, he's got to be clever, he's got to, he's almost got to trick his way into making Everton an attacking threat apart from set pieces. And he was able to do that when he had the core. Obviously he changed the way Everton set up, and he changed the style, and he found a way which probably few of us thought was possible, getting Everton up the pitch and posing a consistent threat in the final third without Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Obviously, that was by getting Decore to support Gray. But obviously, Decore is gone for the last 2 games, isn't available for the next one. And, Everton really just, don't have a plan B, do they? And it's patently obvious, and it's painful to watch. So, you take the positive and say at least they're creating chances. Dyche wants them to have the bliss to miss, the freedom to miss. Problem is, there's the scoring so few of those chances, they haven't really got the freedom to miss. They need to go in because they're not keeping clean sheets at the other end for some of the reasons that we've just discussed. So, it's hard to kind of see what the solution is without. It's hard to see what the solution is for Palace unless Dominic Calvert-Lewin comes back fit. Because obviously we know Decore is not going to be available. Once we get beyond Palace, then obviously we know that Decore is back fit, and we can revert back to the style and the formation, the tactical setup that worked well with Dyche. I think we all agreed worked probably as well as Everton could work, given the resources he's got. So, question is where Everton are at that point, and whether it's enough given the run of fixtures that will then come up and the teams they'll be playing against. Because this felt like such a big game, not necessarily wasn't a don't win it and you're down or anything like that. But when you look at the table, Everton have got 27 points. I think 9 points would probably keep them up. I think 36. This was probably the easiest 3 when you looked at it on the table. Fulham side without Mitrovic, manager in the stands, nothing to play for, lost a whole load of games recently. No real direct attacking threat that Everton should. The attacking threat was very predictable on Saturday. And Everton couldn't do anything about it. And the problem is, it's getting to that 9 points when you take away the potential for 3 of them coming from Fulham, or at least 1 of them coming from Fulham. Then you start to get caused some problems. That's obviously the main thrust of my match report. After the game, the reality now is that they're going to have to go and do something which they've struggled to do for 2 years, and that's probably, if they want to get the points to keep them up, they've got to start winning away from home.
Joe touched on it there, but where do Everton go from here now after this? Because it was such a damaging defeat, and it was such a huge blow in the bid to avoid relegation. Where do Everton go from here?
Well, as Joe just said, they chronically need an away result at some point, whether that's Crystal Palace, and then obviously Leicester City get cranked up even more. Then they've got to go and do that. What is it? Is it three away wins in 2 seasons? That's not good enough. And sort of you're getting propped up on your form at Goodison Park, and then if you're not getting the results there, like on Saturday, yeah, you're just going to have to go and get an away result from somewhere. So they're going to have to, and it's ridiculous, really, because I mean, everyone obviously with the away fans and stuff like that, a lot of teams who don't have these the levels of support that Everton are blessed with away from home, both in the numbers and the way they get behind the teams. I know by nature away fans tend to be more noisy, whatever club that is, but you know the kind of levels that Everton have, you know, up and down the country, cost of living crisis, and they're still always there in their numbers. So those fans just they need to give them something to sing about in one of these away games, and it can't just be like a one-off like Leicester City last season, which the chairman referenced along with the Crystal Palace home game. I mean, it's probably going to go down to the wire either way. Unfortunately, this time, yeah, it's simple. Joe said it himself. I'll say it. You know, got to go and get something away from home.
Gavin, in terms of, you know, Everton getting something away from home, it's a lot more difficult than what it sounds, isn't it? Because of how bad they performed, how bad the struggles have been away from home, and quite simply, you know, the games to come, the teams are playing are all either in form or relegation rivals.
Yeah. I was just looking about like last 2 years. We got 49 points from 61 games. I think since we had that good start onto Benitez, that's like it's a long-term problem. This, isn't it, really, for the team? Yeah, well, because we don't score goals, isn't it? I mean, if you don't score goals, you're certainly not going to get results away from home, are you? Because, as we know, by and large, most teams go, you know, they're more likely to score at home than away. And the away games are tricky. I mean, before we came on air, I said that Leicester game. Sorry. Was that?
No, carry on.
All right, sorry. Please said something. That the away games are tricky in this Leicester game. Saying before we came on air that I can't remember our 3 relegation scraps in the Premier League era where near the end of the season we played somebody who was one of our rivals to go down. So that's going to be a new experience. And the Palace game looks really tricky, doesn't it? They've won 3 on the spin. And then we've got Wolves. I mean, we've just got to hope that Wolves have got the flip-flops on for that game, perhaps. And we've got Brighton away, haven't we? Which, to be fair, probably after Man City away is probably the hardest game you can have in the Premier League at the moment. And I think, let's face it, it's you're looking at if you get 4 points from those 4 matches, we would have done very well. And but we've got to. The reason why we need away wins is the home games aren't great. You've got Man City and Newcastle. 2 of the home games, haven't we? If we get a point from either of them, I'll be well pleased. But it's just like if you don't score goals, Connie, you're not going to win games, are you? And if you don't win games, you don't get points. If you don't get points, you get relegated. It's as simple as that, isn't it? Really.
Joe, there was 1 ounce of small comfort for Everton told me into the weekend. Not a lot, but the fact Southampton, Forest and Leicester also lost. I know it's quite damning that we're looking at other results, but at the minute, everyone's got to take any little positive they can get.
Yeah, I think I was the last one to leave Goodison. So certainly the last member of the press to leave Goodison on Saturday. I had to ring up security to get them to lock up after me. And I was just walking out and just thinking that the only positive I could take from the Saturday was the fact that, as frustrating as it was to see Wolves and Bournemouth win, because it takes them a step further clear of Everton, you know, the chances are, such as the way that they're going about things, both will be safe by the last 2 games of the season. Now, Everton would still need to, perform to get results against them, but that's a lot better prospect than imagining them both being 6-point shootouts. I think Everton have just got to get themselves in a situation where they're still in the battle. They're still, hopefully, still got their fate in their own hands by that point, which isn't going to be easy because of some of those games that we just mentioned. Obviously Palace away on Saturday. They won 3 on the bounce. They're probably, I think they're safe now. They're 1 win away from confirming it. That they're safe. Well, this is their best opportunity to get it. Then they've got 6 games then to kind of start thinking about who their next manager, long-term manager is going to be, start planning for next season and things like that, which was been unthinkable for them 3 weeks ago. So there's going to be an intent from them. You look at Newcastle; they're good, but they're not so good that they haven't sewn up 4th place yet. So they're probably going to want to win to cement their Champions League credentials. You got Man City. All of a sudden, you thought maybe Arsenal would be 4 or 5 points clear at the top of the title of the league, and City would be concentrating on the Champions League. Well, now a win against Everton could well have taken one step closer to the title because of Arsenal's recent results. Brighton will be competing to get into Europe, and then obviously Leicester. I mean, it's just such a huge game, that Leicester game, and the concerning thing for me about Leicester is the fact that they, despite all their troubles at various points under Rodgers, they've typically been comprehensively the better side against Everton when they've met recently. In the 1-1 draw that Charleston scored on the last minute equaliser at Goodison last season, they were miles better than Everton. That game should have been out of sight. Luckily, it wasn't. Everton got a crucial point. It was a brilliant away trip at the King Power Stadium. Memorable day for so many people, and the fans were fantastic, and they had a great day to celebrate. One or two few recently, but it was a win that was founded on the strength of Jordan Pickford's performance. He produced a number of outstanding saves in that game. Could easily have been a different kettle of fish, and then obviously bonfire night. Leicester, if ever you wanted, Everton went into that game. I remember the feed being in the press room thinking Everton win today, then the top half of the table, the way the results had gone earlier on that day, and there was probably no more emphatic example or showcase as to how far Everton were actually off the pace of being a comfortable mid to lower top half table side in the way that James Maddison and co played through them that night. So obviously Leicester are in a mess now, but they've got the ability to cause Everton problems. I think it feels like it's a case of relying on 3 teams to be worse than Everton. I think now. I think Southampton are probably down. I think if Leicester or Forest, and obviously Leicester, their momentum is absolutely atrocious. Forest, their running is absolutely awful. But if either of them show a little bit of result, it's going to be very difficult for Everton to match them, I think.
I think that's correct, Beast. I think Everton are now hoping that there's 3 teams worse than them.
The flip side of it is we thought Brighton were on the beach, and we thought that was going to be
Fulham.
Sorry, Brighton. Yeah, Brighton. I'm already thinking getting Emma himself thinking of our trip there for Joe and I on Bank Holiday weekend. Sorry. Yeah, Fulham are on the beach. Me and Joe might be on the beach. We might be carrying on into the sea. We all thought Fulham were on the beach, and they weren't. So the flip side of that, Joe's just given us like loads of legitimate examples of why all those other teams are going to be motivated and really difficult for Everton to play against. Maybe the flip side of that is that it won't be quite as difficult as the picture has just been painted there. But yeah, they've got to you've got to make sure that you get the points on the board rather than relying on what others are doing.
Well, it all comes down to Gavin Buckland now. Gav, what picture are you going to choose to follow? Beat's upbeat, positive, or Joe's looking at it in a glum what's to come?
What after my comfortable 3-0 home win prediction for Everton on Friday, you mean, Connie? Yeah. I think you've got to stay positive, haven't you? And you've got. I mean, you may not find that you may not 34, 35 might keep you up. You don't know, do you? The problem you've got people playing against each other who are going to take points off each other, aren't they? So I think you've got to remain positive. I think. But that's not enough, isn't it? You've got to say, well, how are you going to change things? Because we can't just. How are we going to have a better attitude on Saturday as well? And I think the central defence needs shoring up. We can't get an Arna and/or Coleman back on the pitch as quickly as possible. Get hopefully DCL. And this has been a DCL-free podcast, thank God, largely. DCL back on the pitch. Or on the grass, as it were, and get a more positive mentality in the players than what we saw on Saturday. I don't think it's just a case of getting on the pitch and praying for it. We've got to be proactive here, haven't we? And change. Dyche has got to be proactive and change things around a bit because it's not working at the moment. And the starting point will be for me play 4-5-1 from the beginning of the game and not after 20 minutes or 25 minutes where you've been battered. So that's a good starting point for picking things up. Pick the right team at the right formation at the start of the game.
I guess Everton, I mean, trying to be a bit more positive. Some of the solutions should come back to Dyche a little bit. Hopefully Calvert-Lewin may well be fit for Saturday, or and play an impact. But judging by what he was saying at the weekend, you'd think for the games after that, and then Decore naturally comes back after a suspension. If you look at Everton fourth, if you then go back to 4-5-1 and you have Decore in the middle and Calvert-Lewin up top, then it's a much different ball game, isn't it?
I think the big thing though is that fans have got to see something to cling on to, haven't they?
Yeah.
I think the weekend there's nothing there to hang on to and think, oh, it's going to be okay because of this. If anything, it was the kind of more of a stark reminder of actually this could be the year where we do go down, because there's nothing to hang our hats on. I think moving forward, no matter what happens at Crystal Palace weekend, fans have got to see something that they can get behind and buy into and really kind of. I think we saw last season where Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin got back fit, and it was all kinds of everyone bought into what was going on. Saturday had that feeling of fans kind of lost that bit of hope that they had because of what they were witnessing with their own eyes.
Felt like Brighton again. It felt like Brighton in the middle of January, didn't it, when things just started to fall apart really dramatically. And then, obviously Dyche came in, changed things around, gave everyone the hope, so maybe he can do the same thing again.
Right, gents, I think we will leave it there. We'll of course be back on Friday to look back on Sean Dyche's pre-Crystal Palace press conference, and of course look ahead to, well, we always seem to say, but another huge game for the Blues. I think we should just grab every game now moving forward as huge. Must win.
Well, it is, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
I think the more you lose, the bigger the games ahead. Yeah.
Well, they seem to be getting bigger and bigger every week, these, don't they? So, but we will, of course, be back on Friday afternoon to look ahead to that game at Selhurst Park. But for today, thank you very much for listening to the Road Blue podcast.